flanked on one side by the famous Sydney Harbour Bridge and on the other by the beautiful Sydney Opera House, Circular Quay attracts more than 10 million visitors every year. And I'm here to see how great placemaking has contributed to one of the world's best waterfront cities. One of the key planning challenges in managing this place is how to balance the needs of local people, business and tourism, whilst developing a vision for the constant renewal that goes on here. Graham Yarn, who is the Director of City Planning, Development and Transport at the City of Sydney Council, explains.
Circular Quay, over time, it has been transformed from a mercantile port city with a polluted edge to gradually, from the 1990s, becoming more accessible till today, where it's the place for holding celebrations. Great waterfront cities kind of fall into three groups. The big residential city behind the beach, like Miami or Rio. The great historic cities, which are always up rivers, like Paris or London. Or the great harbour city, like Singapore or New York. Compared to those, Sydney's unique in that it's got a parkland that comes to the waterfront, a small frontage of contemporary CBD with a historic precinct, and it faces north into the winter sun.
Graham, we're going to see beautiful Quay Quarter Tower. What has that added to the space?
Well, it's one of the first responses of unlocking the difficult parts of the CBD. It's got a landmark tower which focuses on the tenants. It's got a public space on a podium. And then of course over the road you've got a mixed use kind of residential development that is meant to look like it was always there. If that had not been achieved, that would be a difficult project to proceed with, but it was achieved and I'm very pleased to see it come to fruition.
Inside Quay Quarter Tower, visitors are greeted by generous, striking interiors inspired by Australian nature and designed by London-based Tom Dixon. And I've come here to meet Murray Middleton, who is Head of Development for AMP Capital.
One of the important things with our approach was firstly understanding and respecting what we had. And that meant reinvigorating the heritage assets, creating some new lanes, creating the opportunities for a diverse amenity across the two city blocks. In terms of how we created the design concept, it was a true partnership between ourselves and the city. We went through two design competitions. The international competition enabled us to choose 3XN, which we did. And at the same time, we went through a national process to select 4 emerging architects to do the buildings within the Loftus Lanes precinct. And what an amazing outcome that's turned out to be. Again, very different to Quay Quarter Tower, but that's what we wanted to achieve. We wanted to have that variety and diversity across the two city blocks, engendering that really strong sense of belonging in this historic part of Sydney.
The Quay Quarter Tower was designed by world-leading Danish architects 3XN, whose vision of a humanised skyscraper has resulted in one of Asia-Pacific's most innovative buildings.
The first Danish architect working in Sydney was Jørgen Utzon, so we wanted to do something that could play up to the Sydney Opera House. We had to do something special that was in our DNA. And we thought in the same way, we're not going to do just an extruded tower. We want to do something sculptural that does something to the skyline. We want to take all the advantages of a low building into a tall building. So we came up with this idea, what we called a vertical village, stacking one building on top of the other. Another thing that was a challenge was that we have the other smaller building in front of it. And that was an obstacle with views. So we came up with the idea about turning the different elements so they didn't look straight into the building in front of it. In the lower parts you have one view, higher parts when you're free of the building in front of you have another view. So that is why it's turning the way it's turning. And that was our ideas about the design as well.
3XN partner Fred Holt has worked with Kim on the design of Quay Quarter for the past 8 years. And for him, it's Australia's most innovative and most important sustainability project.
We like to talk about 3 levels of sustainability with the design. There's the social sustainability, which is focusing on that user experience. We have an urban sustainability or urban regeneration as well. By reinvigorating this particular precinct through this tower, we've leveraged the infrastructure that was already around. So from a client point of view, developer point of view, they're not making a huge investment. And the environmental sustainability, you can see one of the more salient features of the tower is its facade. There's a solar shade that blocks 30% of the solar radiance, which means your mechanical loads are lower. You don't need blinds for thermal protection. But where the real innovation and environmental sustainability comes in is upcycling the existing tower. So we've sliced off a third of the building and then grafted on another 1,200 square meters of floor plates, so doubling the overall size. So from an innovative sustainability point of view, it's the upcycling that really stands out, I think, with this building.
Doing anything in a new way carries risk, and Quay Quarter Tower is the first large-scale adaptive reuse development in Australia. What I find fascinating is how it happened in such a premium location. I spoke with Kylie O'Connor about risk and return.
We were sort of looking at this from the perspective of obviously our tenant customers in terms of the type of space that we were delivering, the floor plates, the abundance of natural light, and making sure that we could deliver a product that those companies could then attract and retain staff. We had a decision whether to refurb the existing building and leave it as it was, or undertake a major redevelopment. We felt, and the investors supported this decision, that owning a state-of-the-art premium grade asset was going to be a better outcome for them.
And I guess with those long-term hold investors, the sustainability qualifications would really count in favour as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something that everyone is desiring, our investors, tenant customers, the community, council, high sustainability credentials across the board. You know, it was a risk and a leap of faith, but it's well and truly paid off. And creating something like we have today, the most beautiful building in the world.
When buildings are reused rather than demolished, developers can reduce CO2 emissions, the amount of waste going to landfills, consumption of raw materials, and deliver better commercial outcomes for their stakeholders. Brian Donnelly and Andrew Daniel led the development and construction teams.
This industry is responsible for about 40% of all emissions through both the actual built phase and the operational phase. So I think that in itself highlights the significance of taking a really strong approach to sustainability. The environmental benefits associated with that, 12,000 tonnes of carbon emissions saved through construction, which is really significant.
That's massive, isn't it?
That's around about 2 to 3 years of operational savings for the asset. So it was a very interesting intersection of both ingenuity in planning, ingenuity in construction, to create actually a really good financial outcome for our investors in the project.
Yeah, isn't that beautiful that all worked so well together? It might be one of the greenest buildings in Australia, if not the world, true?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it offers a new model for how we can do these sorts of complex engineering and building projects, whereby you don't have to demolish everything and start from scratch. We have to do more with what we already have. We took a 45,000 square metre building from the 1970s and we've transformed that into a 90,000 square metre building that is set for another 50 years.
Yeah, well done. A construction like this obviously has its challenges. So what were some of those challenges?
You know, it took us 6 months to build the scaffold around the tower, which was the largest scaffolding project in the Southern Hemisphere.
Unbelievable.
And it was the world's largest demolition project. So there was a lot of firsts for this project.
Yeah.
And then whilst we're demolishing, we had to build from the bottom up, excavate the basement underneath the old building, and managing safety and logistics. Yeah, it's a true testament to delivering this project as scale it is and in the time frame that we did it. So there's a real happy side for me, but there's also that sadness where I actually didn't want it to finish. So I think from a multiplex perspective, we're a bit sad that it's over, but you know, excited for the future and excited for doing more projects like this.
On the block next to Quay Quarter Tower, a character-filled new city neighbourhood has been created around the restoration of 18th century heritage buildings and cobblestone merchant laneways. Quay Quarter Lanes is a wonderful pedestrian experience and is a must-see destination for people visiting the city. I love the way this space connects the Indigenous heritage of the area as well as the European heritage. That was obviously intentional, Colleen.
Yes, Jonathan Jones is a Wiradjuri Kamilaroi artist, and he's done 5 elements of art that he's interspersed into the precinct, and it's all about bringing the memories of the life of Arabanu.
Beautiful. Leanne, of course, we're in front of Hinchcliffe House. Why is it so special?
It's one of the oldest wool stores in Sydney.
Oh, I didn't realise.
And at 1,000 square metres, it's also our largest food and beverage operator here. And we thought whatever happens inside Hinchcliffe House sets the tone for the rest of the precinct and the experiences that you're going to have here.
Colleen, I know that you're very passionate about art. How have you utilised art for placemaking here?
Well, we've got 2 great pieces of public art with Jonathan's work here, and then the sculpture by Oliver Eliasson on the tower podium, which is called Roof for Stray Thoughts. We see ourselves as part of the cultural ribbon, and we see it as a great connector site for people who love art. All the culture seekers will come to the Art Gallery of New South Wales, they'll come here, they'll go across to the Museum of Contemporary Art and over to the Sydney Opera House and Sydney Living Museums. So we're kind of like a hub for cultural experience.
Well, congratulations to you both. It's really beautiful.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you.
Let's reflect on what's been achieved here at Quay Quarter. 90,000 square metres of premium grade space in one of the world's greenest office towers. A world first adaptive reuse that conserved over 12,000 tonnes of embodied carbon. An entire new mixed-use precinct encompassing 2 city blocks, the restoration of key heritage sites, new public laneways and character-filled retail experiences near Sydney's famous city waterfront. Quay Quarter is a symbol of what's possible, an optimistic and capable response to the challenges of our time. What we see here is an opportunity to deliver a new way of construction and design that minimises environmental impact and maximises value for shareholders, at the same time delivering glorious new spaces for people to work and remember and celebrate what it means to be human. It's a place that everyone should see.